There are moments where the gap between the life you're living and then the life you sense is possible for you feels so bloody far away that the only answer your brain can come up with is to torch the whole thing and build from scratch. Oh, hello, my friend, and welcome back to episode 180 of the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today, and also a big hello to all of my new listeners to the podcast. I just love seeing the number of downloads and new follower numbers grow with each episode. Because my whole goal for the podcast is to give women, especially those of us who are in our 40s, 50s, and 60s, a place where we all feel safe, seen, and supported. Now, midlife women are often forgotten or dismissed in so many ways in our world. But here on the podcast and in my own online communities, that is never the case. And to help the show reach more women like you, I'd love for you to give the show a rating or a review and just share it with another midlife woman. Those small acts can actually make a huge difference for this show. Now, on with today's topic. I want to start this episode with a question. Have you ever got to a point and thought about leaving something or someone? I'm not talking about in a big crisis way, but just, quietly packing a bag, getting in a car and driving somewhere that nobody knows your name and nobody needs anything from you. Starting completely fresh. Now, if that image or thought has ever crossed your mind, even just for a second, you may be surprised to know that this is actually far more common than you'd think. So you're not the only one. And today I want to talk about what that fantasy is actually telling you and then what to do about it. Because I think a lot of women in midlife have felt at some point just perhaps that feeling that you might be feeling right now. Maybe it's a feeling like a deep urge to just blow it up and start all over again. It might be the career, a routine, the relationship, or the life you've somehow found yourself in. There are moments where the gap between the life you're living and then the life you sense is possible for you feels so bloody far away that the only answer your brain can come up with is to torch the whole thing and build from scratch. So if that sounds familiar, I want you to know two things. Firstly, that feeling is not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's actually a sign that something important is waking up. And then secondly, there's a way to answer that call that doesn't require you to blow everything up apart in the process. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, before we dive in, I'd love for you to grab something to write with. Pen and paper, maybe notes app on your phone, whatever's close. Because I'm going to give you some things to sit with today that are worth capturing. There are going to be some journal prompts coming around the middle of the episode. And then by the end of this, I want you to have something real to work with. And then again, if something in today's episode lands for you, if you hear yourself somewhere in this episode, I'd also love for you to share it with a woman in your life who might need to hear it too. Because like I said, it's more common than we think. And sometimes the right episode at the right moment can be just the thing that gives someone else permission to take the first step. You might be that person for someone. Now, here's the thing I want to name before anything else. The burn it all down impulse, well, it's not random. It doesn't arrive out of nowhere. In midlife especially, there are real reasons why the desire for radical change becomes almost overwhelming. And I think it's worth understanding why. Because it helps you work with it rather than just reacting to it. Women in midlife are often, for the first time in decades, giving themselves permission to ask the question, what do I actually want? And sometimes when you open that door, you realize the honest answer has been sitting quietly in the background for years, just waiting. The responsibilities of building a career, raising children, maintaining a home, showing up for everyone else, well, they have a way of turning that volume down on your own desires. And then one day, often without warning, the volume button just goes right back up again. And then it can feel urgent. It can feel like you've been waiting too long, almost like waiting too long forever. And add to that all of those hormonal shifts of perimenopause and menopause, which research actually tells us can genuinely change how women experience risk, patience, and their own sense of time. All of those together, and you've got the perfect storm for wanting to turn everything upside down at once. So I want to be clear here that I'm not going to talk you out of change, because change might be exactly what's needed. In fact, for many of the women that I work with in my private mentoring, the moment they finally commit to making significant change is the moment everything shifts. Well, what I want to talk about today is the difference between change made from a place of intention and then change made from a place of pure reaction. One of these tends to move you to the life you want, and then the other tends to move the problem. So with that as our foundation then, here are 5 ways that can make a big change without burning everything down. So way number 1, get clear on the one true thing that needs to change. When the burn it all down feeling hits, it tends to feel like everything needs to go. The job, where you live, the relationship, the whole version of who you are, yourself. And while that feeling is real and valid, in my experience with working with women, it's rarely actually everything that needs to change. There's almost always one core thing, one true thing that's at the source of the feeling. And when you can identify that, it changes the shape of what actually needs to happen. And here's a question I always come back to with the women I work with when they arrive in that moment of wanting to escape their own life. When you imagine the version of your life that finally feels right, what's the one thing that's different from where you are now? Now, it's a simple question, but it just cuts through all of the noise. Because often what surfaces isn't, I need to leave my marriage or I need to quit my job. It's something underneath all of that. Maybe it's a need to feel seen, or a need to feel like your time belongs to you, or a need to feel like you still have something to contribute that actually does matter. Now, when you can name that real thing, you've got something tangible to work with. You have a direction, and that direction might still lead to big change, but it's the right big change, if you know what I mean, not just the most dramatic available option. And I'd also gently ask you this. Is the thing you want to change the actual source of the feeling, or is it a symptom? Because sometimes we aim at the most visible target when the real issue is sitting one layer deeper. And that doesn't mean the visible thing doesn't need to change too, because often it does. It just means we need to make sure we're not just rearranging the furniture in a house that actually needs a different foundation. Now, here's way number 2. Build before you burn. This is actually one of the most practical pieces of advice that I give, and it's also one that's the hardest to hear when you're ready to go right now. But whenever it's possible, build the new thing, or at least be well on the way before you let go of the old one. Now, I've seen women make big changes both ways. Those who quit the job before they knew what was next, those who ended the relationship before they'd done the inner work, or maybe moved to a new city before they figured out what they were moving toward. And I've worked with women who took the slower and more deliberate, thoughtful route, who started building the new thing quietly in the background before they made that leap. The women who had something to move toward, even if it was still forming, almost always landed better. And this isn't about playing safe in a way that keeps you stuck, because there are absolutely times when a clean break is the only option, and I would never, ever diminish that. But if and when you have a choice, and you often have more choice and agency than it feels like in the middle of an impulse, building before you burn is wisdom and not weakness. It gives the new thing a chance to become real before you release that safety net. It means that you're running towards something and not just running away. And in practical terms, this might look like, having honest conversations before making decisions. It might look like doing the work you'd do with a mentor or a coach before you made a move you can't unmake. It might look like testing the idea before you bet everything on it. None of that is timid, but all of it is smart. Now, here's way number 3. Pace it for your actual life. Now, this one matters, and I want to say it plainly. You are not a 25-year-old with no responsibilities and a whole future ahead of you as a blank page. And I say that not to be mean or discouraging. I say it because pretending otherwise is one of the things that makes women in midlife feel like they're failing at change when they're not failing at all. And you might have children still at home or recently flown from the nest. You might have a partner, aging parents, a mortgage, a business, a community that depends on you. You've got a life that you've built that's full and complex and real. And that life doesn't pause while you transform yourself. So honouring that, actually building your pace of change around the reality of your life rather than the fantasy version of it, it's not compromise. It's the thing that makes change sustainable. Now, I work with women who have decided that the pace of the change is going to be one or maybe a few clear steps and deliberate steps every single week. They're not dramatic, they're not Instagram worthy. They're just honest, intentional actions in the direction of the life that they want. And over months, those steps accumulate into something genuinely different. The change is real. The shift is lasting. And they didn't have to blow everything up to get there. Small steps lead to big changes. And I mean that. I have seen it over and over and over. Transformation that's lasting is almost never the one that happens overnight, but rather over months and usually years. Now, way number 4, tell the right people and protect the process. Boy, this is one I feel really strongly about because I've seen it go wrong in ways that are genuinely heartbreaking and experienced it to some extent myself. Big change is vulnerable. When something new is taking shape, when you've decided you want to maybe leave the career that's been your identity for a number of years or decades, or start the thing that you've always wanted to start, or step into a version of yourself that's very different from the one the people around you have come to expect, that idea is really tender and it needs to be held carefully. And the people in your life, even the ones who love you, don't always hold it carefully. Sometimes they project their own fears onto your dream. Sometimes they ask questions that sound like support, but really are doubt in disguise. And then sometimes their reaction, even if it does come from love, is enough to make you second guess something that was actually right for you before you'd even begun. So be intentional about who you bring in to this early stage. Choose the people who have earned the right to hear it, the ones who will sit with you in the uncertainty without trying to rescue you from it or talk you out of it. Your change does not need to be announced before it's well and truly ready, and you're allowed to build it quietly first. You're allowed to protect that process. It's not about secrecy. It's just about giving the new thing enough air and space to breathe before you let the opinions of everybody else into the room. Now, I want to pause here for a moment because this is actually a good place to stop and write some things down. And if you're moving or going about your day and you can't pause, come back to this later. Maybe screenshot where you're up to. And if you're sitting with a pen and paper, here are 3 prompts that I want you to sit with and write afterwards. Number 1, what's the change that you keep coming back to? And what do you believe it would actually give you? Number 2, is there something you're trying to move away from that you haven't yet faced directly? Number 3, what would this change look like if you did it on your own terms? Now take your time with these questions and just know there are no right answers and there are no wrong answers. They're just honest ones. And those are the ones that are worth finding. If you'd like a little bit more support with that kind of reflection, I do have a free resource. It's called my 10-minute midlife check-in. And it's designed to help you get underneath the surface and just start hearing your own voice more clearly. And you can find it at joeclarkcoaching.com/check-in, or just DM me on Instagram with the word check-in and I'll send you the link straight away. I'll also put the link in the show notes for you too. Okay, final one, way number 5. Expect the messy middle and don't mistake it for failure. Look, I'm going to be honest with you about something because I think it's the piece that trips women up more than anything else. Big change does not feel clean while it's happening. There's a stage in any big or significant transition, and I know this space only too well, I'll get it out eventually, where the old thing has let go and the new thing hasn't quite arrived yet. Now, when you've made that decision, but the outcome isn't certain, or where you're not who you were, but you're not fully who you're becoming. And that in-between space is so uncomfortable. Our brain's been developed to keep us feel safe and familiar. So when we move into those uncharted territories, it senses that. And you'll feel those uncomfortable feelings and you'll start having those doubting thoughts. It can feel like you've made a terrible mistake. It can feel like the ground has gone from underneath you. And it can feel like everyone else seems to know exactly who they are and what they're doing, and you're the only one who's wandered into the fog. That feeling is not a sign that you've got it wrong. It's a completely normal, completely expected part of genuine transformation. The fog is part of the crossing. And what I encourage the women I mentor to do when they're in that really uncomfortable space is this. Don't make permanent decisions from those temporary feelings. Don't interpret difficulty as failure. And don't go back to the thing you just left because the new thing is still forming. Stay in it. Stay curious about it. And just keep putting one foot in front of the other, even when you can't see that whole path. And I know that the women who come through that messy middle, the ones who let it be uncomfortable without letting it stop them, well, they are the ones who arrive somewhere genuinely new. Not a tidier version of what they left behind, but actually something completely different. Something that fits them and the woman they are now. And I'm actually lucky enough to get a front row seat when I mentor women, and it's actually the best thing that I get to witness. So let me bring all of this back to you. If you're sitting with a change that's been asking for your attention, I want to leave you with this. You don't have to blow up your life, and you don't have to stay exactly as you are. There's a third option, and it is available to you right now, today. It starts with getting honest about the one true thing. Then you build it before you burn. You pace it for your real life. You protect it from the wrong voices, and you stay the course through that messy middle. None of that's dramatic, but all of it is transformative. Now, if you want to work, support while you're doing that work, if you want someone in your corner while you're figuring out this whole new next chapter, my door is always open. And you can find me at joeclarkcoaching.com or on Instagram at joeclarkcoaching, and we can talk about what working together might look like. I would love nothing more than to walk along you beside you as you go through all of this. Thank you so much for being here today, my friend. And if you are thinking about making a big change, or if you're going through some big changes, I really do hope that this episode has helped you. So take care, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, follow, and share it with another incredible midlife woman. And join me next week as we keep creating an amazing second half of life.